This is so good to be with everybody. Welcome to our live stream, and I am so excited that today we have a very special guest, Sanyin Siang, and we've been knowing each other for quite a while now. And I will not tell you all about Sanyin from her accomplishments because that would probably take the entire time of our broadcast. But she is a professor at Duke. She works with CEOs, with top military, with the executives. She is working with the MBA students, so she sees a gamut of what's happening in the leadership these days. And of course, Sanyin and I met first time, I think, when we were both nominated for the Thinkers 50 Coaching Award, which Sanyin won in 2019. She was recognized by Thinkers 50 by also mentoring, I believe, and coaching and management. So she's one accomplished person, wrote some books. So she's just a phenomenal guest for us. And thank you, Sanyin, to join us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Magda. Now, all people need to know about me is my mission in life is to enable greatness in others, and I'm a huge fan of Magda Mook as a leader, as a person, a human being, how you show up, and I am so in all of the impact the International Coaching Federation has made over the decades. So it's an honor for me to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again. I see the sun is shining in North Carolina today. That's good. So yes, you work with such a different kinds of leaders. And is there something in particular that you observed that you would think changed or didn't change as far as the requirements for leadership? We talk a lot about different expectations, modern leadership, what have you. There's as many terms, as many people talking about them. So what do you observe? Are there changes? Are we just using different words for always being a heart of leadership?
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you asked that question. So, one of the patterns that I'm seeing across the board is this need of doubling down on what makes us human. So, whether it's a CEO or a manager or a first time entry level or a MBA student or an undergraduate student, the one thing that connects all of us is that we're human beings. And as human beings, we all desire to be seen, we all desire to matter. We want to serve something that is greater than ourselves. And so, with that in mind, I think that's always been a fundamental of leading and influencing throughout the ages, but more so than ever in this period of time, people are expecting more. So, 10 years ago, what's termed leadership might be about, well, here's like the architecture and the structure, what we see as more as management, and they're just putting the term leadership on it. It's really becoming more about here's the behaviors, here's the influence, and here's the dynamism around how do we work as human beings to build trust and work towards something that is that's a worthy goal, as our friend Michael Bungay Stanier would put it.
Sure. And especially working with MBA students, they are leaders in making, although I think that many of them already come with a great leadership skills and something under their skin that will make them great leaders. And I do know that at the center you offer coaching. What's behind that decision? And do you see any particular accomplishments or any particular changes in who they are when they finish their MBA work because of coaching?
Oh, all right. So going back, just a little bit of context about our Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. We launched in 2004. And when we launched at that period in time, our students, we are a strong team school. We've always been. So this moniker of Team Fuqua, that's always been a part of our ethos. Interestingly, when we were going to launch a leadership center 20 some years ago, there was resistance to it because they saw leadership as position and power, and that it's antithetical to teaming. When we said, no, no, leadership is about behaviors and influence. So on a team, you can have one person in a position of leadership, but you can have a team of five, you can have five leaders. and it's this dance. How do you lead? And team isn't about being nice to one another. It is actually about recognizing the interdependence we have on one another, and leadership and team and character and ethics. They all go hand in hand like this. So when we started, our mission was, we saw where the world was going, and we said, look, business we can't just only be producing people who are functional experts in marketing and finance. Those are baseline, those are just table stakes. We need to develop a type of leaders that society needs. If business is a driver of society, then we need students who are going to be future people in leadership positions who can affect positive change. So let's give them the tools and skill sets. And each year, first year class, entering class, there's about 400 students. And we said, all right, what if we take 10% of those 40 students and we imbue them with the tools for coaching, mentoring, facilitation. And then they are then they become the coaches, mentors, and facilitators for every single first year MBA student, so that they get this deeper. There are Coach K Center leadership fellows that get this deeper training with the learning outcome, but then it's also experiential, applied to the setting of actually facilitating first year teams. And how do you give feedback? How do you have difficult conversations? How do you, create like a team charter so you can set expectations, all those things. And they start at the end of their first year with this training. And then at the end of their second year, which is a 2-year MBA program, they choose their successors. We don't choose, as the administration, their successors. Choose their successors. So that's this idea of, as a leader, part of your responsibility is also succession planning, leave a place better than you found it, and then set for continued success going forward.
I am so excited about hearing that leadership development is very explicitly showing up in the curricula for schools like Duke, and our common friend General Colditz, of course, at Rice University started doing a lot of work, and there is now this coalition of, I believe, 117 universities around the globe saying just going through college degree program does not make a person a leader. So this is so exciting that the center is really centering on the leadership skill as the preparing a person to be a good leader. Talking about Duke University, I can't help myself but to mention Coach K, and I'm probably one of a few people who can pronounce the name correctly. He is
Polish.
So, and he's just retired, right? After such a many years of very successful career, the center is named after him, I presume. What would you say? I know you're quite a fan of Coach K. What would you say about him as a leader?
All right. So when people think about great coaching, and by the way, when we started the center, we said we want to learn from Coach K, because what he's doing on the courts can be applied to in sports. We can be also applied to leading organizations, and he also embodies the character of leadership, the service to others, and it's part of his military background too. His service to others, his ethics, integrity. He will always tell you the truth, and it's not about me; it's about the team, right? And so we said that is what we mean when we think about leadership. So he's also the perfect. We were very lucky to have someone like him on campus who's the embodiment of that. So what would I say about Coach K as a leader? I think one thing that would surprise people is when they think about him as a coach, they're thinking, wow, what little coaching techniques are different? Like what are the drills? Well, here's the interesting thing. We have General Bob Brown, who played under Coach during his time as an undergraduate at West Point, because Coach coached at West Point. And General Brown, who's a dear friend, he came back, and he's also General Brown, by the way, is also known as a coach among the military, because he just has that heart for people development. When he came back to one of our Coach K basketball practices. He looked at the drill sheet. He's like, this hasn't changed in 40 years. The drill sheet, the drills, they're exactly the same.
Hmm.
So what has changed? And I think that was the thing I think that people will be surprised at is coach is constantly honing the how do you get to know your people? How do you activate, the best in them? How do you help inspire? It's not about only about preparation. It's also about inspiring them to be their
Hmm.
best selves. How do you do all of that when the context is changing? So there's the fundamentals, which are the drills, but the people portion. And so he would, for example, the players coming in, they're age 17 and 18. He's getting older. So the gap is widening. He will listen to the music that they listen to. He would, he would just find different ways of connecting because he needs to understand where their heads are at, where they are emotionally. And one of the things I learned from Coach K that I never thought about before, because we tend to intellectualize leadership, is it's not enough for people to know something, they have to feel it and to believe it. Now, when we think about that, how often do we think, oh, values? We are able to now, go through committees, articulate the values of the organization, come up with really pretty, signs that here's our mission, here's our purpose, here's our values. Okay, they know it. Do they feel it and believe it? And what does that mean? So that's where he's spending time on managing that emotional energy, getting to know his players. What language would they respond to? And and then he's fluid. Leadership is fluid. It's not fixed. It's dynamic and it's fluid. So
Sure. Yeah, he's quite an amazing man, and I heard you talk about him and so many others talking about it, and his successes over the years, consistent success over the years. So there must be a special sauce, right? And I guess I'm quite fascinated in your recent work on superpowers. And you make this statement that every one of us does have a superpower. We simply may not be aware of it, or because it's ours, it's innate, we don't even recognize it as a superpower and may not cultivate it and may not even think it's that special.
mhm.
So tell us more about the superpowers. I find it very empowering to talk about superpowers.
All right. So before we jump there, I want to go back to a point that you made about how there's all these great leaders like Coach K, Francis Hesselbein that we know, Marshall Goldsmith, and I would say you're someone I talk about a lot as one of those great leaders, Magda, because you have when you show up, your authenticity, you're never trying to prove yourself. You're always so engaged with the others and your humility, your curiosity, and your focus on here's the mission of what we're all trying to achieve. Here's let's celebrate that. Let's lift each other up in that. Those are the marks of great leadership. And I'm so honored to have the chance to learn from you, Magda. And so I don't want us to leave that point about, wow, here's Coach A, he's great, and he is. But I also want to say, hey, I'm looking at an amazing leader right here because of all those behaviors and the way that you show up and how you know how to make everyone around you feel.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
So I think so on superpowers, no. So as I say that, you'll be like, oh, I did, isn't that how everyone shows up? Isn't that and you're like, this is just how you show up. So you discount it, right? Because you think it comes easily for you to treat everyone with dignity and respect, the focus on mission. And therefore you think when we tend to discount what comes to us easily and think everyone else has it too. And therein lies one of the key insights I had in this work around superpowers. When I'm doing 360s with CEOs, or whether I'm doing feedback sessions with students, everybody wants to jump over what are the good things and the strengths, and just go to let's work on our areas for improvement. I said, okay, the areas for improvement. That's one set of data to help us see ourselves clearly. But we also need to understand what we should keep on doing, what makes us
Mm.
special and extraordinary, because that's also our differentiating contributors. And so, even the way, instead of framing things as strengths and weaknesses, I frame things as what are your superpowers and what are the behavioral detractors that gets in the way of the superpowers really become differentiating contributions. So, for example, an intellectual superpower might be the ability to see trends and say, okay, this is where our company needs to go. But we all know those Cassandras in our organization, right? From the Greek myth, like Cassandra can predict the future, but no one listened to her. It's a superpower, but that person's behavior detractor might be they talk over everyone else, or they're condescending, or they don't listen. And therefore, that detracts from them actually being able to make the full use of their superpowers in service of the organization. So that's one big thing. So I would say to everyone who's listening in, and as you're coaching others, even if they want to skip over the strengths, there's always something surprising in those strengths, behavioral wise, that they should actually double down on, and also think about what they should keep on doing as well as what they should stop doing. So that's a just a key idea, and I'll just pause there and reactions and thoughts, because as I'm developing this work, and I have my newsletter on leadershipplaybook.substack.com, where I'm testing out these ideas. I will be curious to see your reactions, like Magda, thoughts.
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm familiar with your work, and this is something that uh, some of us may, when hearing you describe the superpowers, may think it's maybe a little bit counterproductive to what you said at the beginning, the team, the humane organization. It's not an individual, it's a collection of individuals that are making an organization great. So how do you navigate the superpower of a team when you have a team of superpowers in place? How would you, it could look a little bit like a paradox.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad you asked that question. So this is where I'm going to go back to like our comic heroes. You've got Justice League, you've got Marvel. There is a group of individuals with specific superpowers, right? But one of the things is they need to work together as a team. And
Hmm.
it's a combination. So you get two things. One is this set of superpowers, right, from an individual. Um, they're contributing to the team, but they're also recognizing, hey, this is where something might be a weakness. I'll give you an example. The way we talk in our organizations is like inadvertently is like as follows: hey, Superman, great job flying, but look at Aquaman. You should take swimming lessons. Hey, Aquaman, you like you can, yeah, you're awesome swimming, but look at Superman. He can fly, right? We do that inadvertently. We just compare people's superpowers to another person's weaknesses rather than saying, you know what, Superman, you do flying. That's what you love. That's what you do best. Aquaman will take care of like the villains in the sea, right? And so you then collectively, you also have a collective super team superpowers, right? That
Right.
is different. That is different than what each individual can bring. Then here's the other thing, it's this idea of the assists. So we record assists in sports. We don't do that in our organizations. And a lot
Hmm.
of times, I see if we're thinking about teams, then it's also about chemistry. It's about the human to human connection. It's about emotions. When do we recognize and reward one, the assists, right? The second, third order effects that lead to that success on the team? Not very often. And often those assists are also the emotional superpowers. So
Hmm.
that person, that may be an executive assistant, or it may be the CEO. They can be the emotional glue. That's part of their superpowers. Or you might have someone on the team who's a skeptic, But you know what? In being a skeptic, we think, oh, why would we want to listen to skeptics? Hey, they're helping us understand our blind spots. And if we have a team of only optimists, that's not going to go. And if we have a team of skeptics, we won't get anything done. And so it's also thinking beyond the functional superpowers, but also the collective emotional superpowers, recognizing those. And a lot of times those are in the assists. And so recognizing those, even if the organization doesn't yet know how to value a particular superpower because they can't see, it's not to see them, know that the value is there, but you as a leader of the, or in a person in a leadership position or as a teammate, have the agency to help recognize that and call that out.
You said something that really sticks with me, and this is that recognizing the assist. And it may not be just the first assist, right? And how do we make sure that those who assist are getting recognition for it? Because that's the leadership moment for them as well, right? So how do we make sure that we tie it into a canvas of the organizational being, not to only, okay, we already know we have the superpowers and we need to recognize that, not always working on improving something that may not be perfect or impossible, one flying, one swimming, right? But yeah, how to recognize the team and those assists, because it could be somebody who does not have rank and in an organization at all, right? It may be somebody who just ran across the street and bought something for the presentation that's happening right now. So I'm fascinated with this concept of never, ever forgetting to thank the assist for the assist.
All right. So one is, and I forgot who it was, but there's a book out that's about the non-promotable work, right? How sometimes women are doing the non-promotable work in organizations, such as putting together that slide deck, putting all the things that aren't recognized, but those are huge, huge assists, right? Or people who are making the introduction so that the sales team can actually land that sales. And it's a team. We're all a team effort. So one, for those who have the positional authority, who are in leadership positions, make those assists visible, right? So you'll just say, hey, so and so, if it weren't for that, is a phenomenal slide deck that really shows the persuasive quality of what we're trying to do here, which enabled the marketing team or the sales team to really close that deal, right? It could be that, and then even better, if you get the people who are the teammates, like that sales team leader, to say, oh, we are able to do this as a result of so-and-so and so-and-so doing this. And they're pointing out the first assist, the second assist, the third assist. That means it's internalized and they're thinking about it and recognizing with greater sense of humility that this isn't just about me. This is possible, all of us. So going back to Coach K, one of the first things he would do when the players come into the university is he hands them a packet, and in that packet would be the name and the picture of every single member of the cleaning crew. And then they would meet the cleaning crew. They said they may not be with us on the court when we're playing, but be sure to know they're a member of our team, right? And so that sets, as a person with authority, you can set the tone, but then how do you now inculcate that? By asking each person, they have to recognize the assist. And one of the effects of this is in an organization, people are noticing what gets recognized, what gets valued. And if everyone is just wanting to close that sale and not wanting to help, that's not going to be effective. But when they see that assisting is actually one of the recognized positives, you'll start seeing people assisting each other more, because the incentive system, which includes those words of praise, are now in place to not only recognize, but also reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So Sanyin, as nowadays the teams are working so differently, right? We went out of completely remote. Most organizations are really still talking about hybrid and not probably going back to face to face. The teams on one hand, I think the teams are becoming more diverse that way because you can invite colleagues from all over the world and still be a cohesive team. And with those superpowers, what does it take of a leader to be able to be effective, as you said, motivational, and getting to know their team for the best impact and the best effect for the organization and the organizational goals?
I think one of the things is understanding, you know, so when we were all in person, we have those chit chat moments, the agendaless conversations. We're waiting in line for, for the coffee, or in between breaks at meetings, and we're just chatting about everything, nothing. Those things. I know, Manda, that your partner is a jazz musician, right? And you know about my children, and those are things that may not seem to apply to what we are doing in our work, but they are connecting us, helping us to relate to each other even more deeply. Our sense of community, our values, and those are important. When we went into the virtual world, imagine when we schedule a Zoom or a Google Meet, suddenly, because it takes time to schedule that, it's not seemingly random or serendipitous, we immediately jump into agendas. When in fact, that's when we have to be mindful and intentional about creating a space for those agendaless conversations. So it could be now, as everyone is coming back in different ways and forms and hybrid, we're not the same person that we were before. Plus, we have new members of the team. So we actually have to get to know each other again. So why not? And I just recently heard this from, I was speaking for this major technology company, and this was a tip that one of the participants gave that she did on her team, which is she had everyone do a who am I, just one pager. And they share that with each other, whether they've been working there for 20 years or whether they've been working there for 1 month. Guess what? Even people who have known each other and worked together for 10 years, we are now different. So we need to, it's good to have that, as a start. And I think in every meeting, if it's, we can always take 5 minutes to say, okay, what's a hobby that that you've learned, or what's something that's meaningful, or send over an inspire, put in chat an inspiring quote. Things like that, they have an effect. They have an effect. And so I think this idea of knowing each other as human beings, because that's what connects us. Um,
We could be talking for about 7 years and we still wouldn't be done, right? But you just said about maybe a quote, maybe getting to know something about, and it's never been easy to be a leader, I think, and it's not necessarily getting any easier these days. You mentioned some inspiring quotes. The quote I came across recently, I'm just giggling when I read that quote. It was from Steve Jobs, who said, "If you want to please everybody, don't be a leader. Sell ice." Right.
that's it.
And so what advice would you have for all the leaders who are expected to be resilient, who are expected to hold the team, who are expected to find those superpowers in everybody? What can they do for themselves? How can they resource themselves in this circumstance?
Oh gosh. So there's two things. One is remembering front and center, people don't follow positions or titles. They follow human beings. So it's okay for you to show up as a human being. I mean, when I give talks, there are times when I'm like, it's unscripted. So I'll be like, hey, wait, I have to take a pause. Like in the moment of the talk, I would say, I have to take a pause because I'm trying to decide which direction to go to land at the objective. And they're okay with that. Right. So show up. You don't always have to. Now, there's no room for anger or sarcasm, but you can show up and say, okay, here are the challenges. But you know what? Together, I know that we can figure out the path forward. It's that confidence, but it's also you're not sugarcoating it. You can say, this week this week was a devastating week for our nation because of what happened in Texas. I mean, it affects me as a parent. And I can say, look, I'm not going to be fully myself this week because that does affect me. You're in Poland right now. What's happening in the Ukraine, that affects. But we share that. We show up as human beings, and people understand, and they're craving that. And then the second thing is for our personal resilience. Here's what I found. It's never, we think about grit as like, what level of individual grit do we have? But I think resilience is also built on our friendships and our community. I'm an engineer, so I think about systems. So I think about systems resilience. How do we create systems resilience for ourselves? It's the friendships that I have. There are times when people think Sanyin must never have a bad day. She shows up with a smile. I'm like, I have a lot of bad days. But before I show up, I might be on the phone with a good friend who knows me and talking through. So by the time we as leaders, and that people are watching our emotions and they're watching our expressions, by the time we show up, we need to show up and be the leader our people need us to be, right? But that resilience is built through community. You and I have had these conversations before. Well, we're there for each other, and that's how we can exceed whatever individual resilience we have to have an even greater sense of resilience, team resilience.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to, well, first and foremost to hear that there are ways to support ourselves, to resource ourselves. So this is wonderful. And last question, Sanyin. You are a coach yourself. So everything we talk about, superpowers, teamwork, resilience, humane organization, where is a space and place for coaching in all of that?
We all need coaches. I have an entire team of coaches that I call up, right? And say, okay, on this issue, I need some perspective. And by the way, so the secret is out. All these things I'm coaching on, they're things I struggle with. I struggle with imposter syndrome. So I'm going to coach on imposter syndrome because I can relate. And haven't we found as coaches and as mentors that the best way to solve address problems we're facing is to help others address? So imposter syndrome, let's figure out how we can minimize it for others. And then through that conversation, we're like, oh, yes, I'm learning this and this and this. And I have to remember to apply it to myself. Funny thing, maybe not so funny. So no one holds you accountable like a 12-year-old. And my oldest daughter is a 12-year-old. So, and I'm not very good yet at, the habits that keep me fit, like exercising or eating less sugar. I love sugar. I love sugary sweets. So guess what? I recruited her to be my personal trainer. And I'm like, okay, Sophie, here's some principles, goal gradient theory, right? Which is the closer we feel like we're to a goal, then we will actually increase our amount of effort. So therefore, break down the goal into subparts. And here's some of the things. And your job is to coach me and hold me accountable. And we had that conversation, and she's doing it because I have a hard time saying no to my children. So I'm like, this is a really great way of, she's the right person for the job. But I do think coaching, because we don't see ourselves clearly. And as coaches, we not only help them get data, like that's what 360s are for, that can help them see themselves clearly, but we can also provide that external perspective and then the specific actionable tools that they can have around behaviors. If you're a leadership behavioral coach, if you're a strategy coach, I mean, we know there's all different types of coaches. There's financial coach, whatever it is, you can help that person achieve their goal, becoming the best person that they aspire to be. And we all need that. We all need coaching.
I have to wholeheartedly agree with that. Sanyin, thank you so much for visiting with us. Again, we could be talking for 2 more hours at least. And I hope that I know that you offered so many concepts to me that are intriguing, interesting, and I'll be digging around them more and more. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience. And I hope that our audience will have many questions for you and find you.
Yeah.
She can be found. Believe me, she can be
On LinkedIn, just
found.
message me on LinkedIn, or I would love more feedback on the superpowers idea. Just come and subscribe. It's free subscription, leadershipplaybook.substack.com, or you can go into Substack and just put leadership playbook, and then you'll find me. And I would love to hear from ICF members and everyone who's listening in on this.
Super. I hope people will do that. And with that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being with us. And I hope to see you next month at our next LinkedIn Live for International Coaching Federation. Bye.
Thank you.